Kia ora koutou. Welcome to this briefing on the Aotearoa New Zealand Sustainable Finance Taxonomy consultation for the energy sector. We're very pleased to have you with us today, and we've had over 80 registrations for this event. My name is Jess, and I lead the development of the New Zealand Taxonomy on behalf of the Centre for Sustainable Finance. CSF provides the secretariat and coordination functions for the development of the New Zealand Taxonomy. So today we're going to briefly cover an introduction to sustainable finance taxonomies generally and the New Zealand project thus far. And then we'll have a look at the structure and some of the key features of the criteria that will be open for consultation. And we'll talk through the details of making a submission. Next slide, please. So a sustainable finance taxonomy is pretty simply a classification system for sustainable activities in different sectors. Many financial institutions will have their own internal taxonomies or frameworks for decisions about capital allocation. But by having an open source taxonomy, we have clear, transparent, and highly credible criteria available to decision makers. By reducing the cost, friction, and risks associated with assessing the sustainability credentials of different activities, the New Zealand taxonomy intends to aid the flow of capital to such activities. In New Zealand, our work has started with the development of definitions and criteria for activities which contribute to climate change mitigation, as well as adaptation and resilience for the agriculture and forestry sectors in 2025. And now in 2026, we are focused on the energy sector and the construction and building sector. Next slide, please. So this is the purpose of the New Zealand taxonomy, and you can read more about the development of this purpose as well as the design priorities on the CSF website in the ITAG report. But the purpose here is to direct and mobilise capital towards those activities that align us to a net zero future, that restore nature, and that uphold the rights of Indigenous peoples. The activities included in the New Zealand taxonomy can be thought of as a shopping list for the future. They set out the goalposts that we are moving towards and stake out which activities are compatible with a net zero Paris-aligned 2050 economy. And by doing so, they provide investors with confidence and the industries with a North Star to aim at. By setting these long-term environmental goalposts, the taxonomy intends to support businesses and investors to align current decision-making with an environmentally sustainable and resilient economic system in the long term. Next slide, please. So these are some of the use cases for the New Zealand taxonomy. And it's worth noting that its primary users will be financial institutions. We're seeing taxonomies globally being used by bond issuers and insurers as well. Anyone who's looking for credible ways to assess sustainability claims and risks. For businesses, the aim is ultimately to increase the quantum of finance available for sustainable activities and aid them in attracting this capital. We are also seeing taxonomies being used by businesses to demonstrate alignment with global customer expectations, in telling their sustainability stories, and in enabling efficient access to global markets. Next slide, please. So an important reminder that the New Zealand taxonomy is, of course, a voluntary framework for both the sectors that are being classified and for financial institutions. It provides decision-useful information by setting clear criteria for what effective climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience activities look like. But it remains at the discretion of any business owner or operator if they wish to undertake any of those activities. And likewise, it is at the discretion of any financial institution or investor if they wish to use this information in capital allocation decisions. And of course, there will also be a range of other information that they use in this decision making. Just a final point to highlight on this slide, the New Zealand taxonomy is a specific tool, and it's doing one job, which is making options for environmentally sustainable capital allocation decisions clearer. It cannot manage considerations for wider sector or economic transitions, and these remain firmly in the remit of government planning and policy and industry action. And I'll talk about some of the implications in the energy system transition for this in a second. But just quickly to cover why New Zealand is developing a sustainable finance taxonomy, if we go to the next slide. Sustainable finance taxonomies are implemented or in development in more than 50 jurisdictions globally. And as they are developed and adopted, the risk is that international investment applies the criteria developed in Europe or China or other jurisdictions to assessing New Zealand businesses. The other risk is that the increased friction of having no comparable framework and New Zealand being a small optional market for investment means that we miss out on opportunities to attract capital. So this is the reason that we are working to develop a domestically relevant but globally interoperable sustainable finance taxonomy for New Zealand. Next slide, please. And this shows the status of the New Zealand, of the global taxonomy project, countries that are in development or have already implemented their sustainable finance taxonomies. Next slide, please. So, as we talked about, the New Zealand taxonomy is not a replacement or a proxy for sectorial planning or policy, and it only provides criteria to assess the environmental performance of economic activities. It does not and is not the appropriate mechanism to assess system-level requirements. That said, we know there are some very important system-level considerations, such as security and affordability, that are particularly relevant for the energy sector. As such, in the development of the draft criteria, the technical groups have taken a do-no-harm approach to these important areas. And throughout this consult, we are very keen to hear from experts who might have views on this. The technical groups have also considered providing some guidance for giving consideration to these wider system issues in relation to investments, and we welcome expert views on the inclusion and scope of this guidance as well. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the process of developing the criteria so far. Next slide, please. So the consultation draft that you will see in a week or so has been developed through a robust process that was established in alignment with leading international approaches to sustainable finance taxonomy design. And we've drawn on a diverse expertise, and it's supported by strong governance and regulatory oversight. So there are two main working groups who have developed this draft of the energy criteria. These are the Technical Advisory Group, or our TAG. This is a sector-specific working group who have primarily provided technical inputs on appropriate definitions, which activities should be included, and the details of the criteria for those energy sector activities. Then we have the Technical Experts Group, or the TEG. The TEG primarily consider the usability, the interoperability, and the overall credibility of the criteria, and that they are serving their intended purpose. They provide oversight and endorsement of the TAG's work, and they consider how the taxonomy is delivering on that purpose and the recommendations that were endorsed by the Minister of Climate Change. Each of these groups includes representatives from industry, from civil society, from academia, from across the financial sector, and include iwi and Māori organisations and perspectives as well. All of this work is overseen by the Ministry for the Environment as the directing ministry, and is reviewed by a government quality assurance function at regular intervals. And of course, the Centre of Sustainable Finance is there providing the secretariat function. Next slide, please. So these are our TEG members for 2026. So they are providing that usability, interoperability, and credibility piece to the design. And next slide, please. This is the energy sector specific tag. So all of these names are available on our website if you want a chance to have a look through them in more detail. Next slide, please. Also involved in the process is the Climate Bonds Initiative, who are here as technical partners on the taxonomy development. So CBI is an international organisation focused on mobilising global capital to support a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy. And they most prominently work on this through bonds markets. CBI have also been involved in the development of almost all taxonomies globally. They guide our technical process, and they also keep an eye on the international interoperability of the criteria, which is a key consideration for them successfully delivering on their purpose. Next slide, please. So looking at the energy sector work timeline, following the direction from the Minister of Climate Change in September of 2025, the Energy Technical Advisory Group, so that sector-specific group, were formed in October last year, and they began their work immediately. They have worked very diligently through Q1 and Q2 of this year to arrive at the draft criteria, which have then been reviewed and subsequently endorsed by the Technical Experts Group as the draft for public consultation. The process to arrive at this draft is currently being reviewed by the Government Quality Assurance Function in expectation of our consultation opening on June the 8th. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit of an overview about why we're creating a sustainable finance taxonomy and the process to do so. Let's turn now to the structure of the taxonomy criteria and what you will see for consultation. So first of all, taxonomies classify economic activities. And so at their most basic form, they are a list of these activities. And there is a methodological approach developed to assessing activities that can contribute to an environmental objective and the overall purpose of the taxonomy. And you're able to view that approach on our website, and it will also be available in the consultation materials. But that's the guiding framework for how activities are determined as to whether they can be included in the taxonomy. Activities that are included are classified as green, and in the mitigation criteria, there's also a transition classification. In general, green activities are those that are already aligned with the net zero goal, where transition classification is applied when there is a hard-to-abate industry that is necessary in the economy, which has no low-carbon alternatives and can substantially reduce emissions, even if they are not yet at net zero. Again, you can read more about this methodological framework on the website, and it will be available in the consultation materials as well. The main piece of the taxonomy are the actual criteria to assess the performance of these activities. And you'll see in the materials that there are three sets of criteria. First off, there are substantial contribution criteria. And these detail how an activity demonstrates that it is making a substantial contribution to the environmental objective. So this is where we see performance metrics and thresholds that an activity needs to meet in order to be considered to be making a substantial contribution to, for example, climate change mitigation. As far as possible, these criteria are grounded in robust technical and scientific evidence, and any transition criteria are designed to ensure that activities go beyond business as usual and meaningfully advance progress towards alignment with the Paris Agreement. The substantial contribution criteria are the core component of the framework, and they are specifically designed to drive positive outcomes for the environmental objectives. Then there are two other sets of criteria, the do no significant harm and the minimum social safeguards, which provide safeguards to the substantial contribution criteria. So the do no significant harm criteria check that an activity that is making a substantial contribution does not cause negative adverse impacts on other environmental objectives. And similarly, the minimum social safeguards ensure that the entities that are being classified meet minimum standards for social responsibility. So these consider things like labour rights, governance, and Indigenous rights. So in its full form, an activity that meets a substantial contribution criteria is then assessed against the DNSH for other environmental objectives and the MSS as safeguards. And activities that are assessed and meet all of these criteria can be considered New Zealand taxonomy aligned. Next slide, please. So what you're going to see in this consultation, you'll find the substantial contribution criteria for climate mitigation activities in the energy sector. So those main criteria and thresholds for mitigation activities. Under adaptation and resilience, you'll find a sector-specific whitelist. This whitelist contains specific interventions that could be applied to an activity or asset to improve its adaptive capacity or resilience. And the whitelist is really aimed at creating an easier entry point for organisations to start thinking about and accessing finance for adaptation and resilience interventions without needing to undertake a full climate risk assessment and design adaptive responses. Then there are energy-specific do no significant harm criteria, which outline the specific protections from adverse environmental consequences relevant to the energy sector activities. And finally, there is a proposal for some guidance to support consideration for investment into entities that might have fossil activities in the context of a credible system transition. Noting that these activities in the guidance would not be considered New Zealand taxonomy aligned, but we have heard calls from the market to include considerations for wider system transition, and that is the intent of this guidance. So these are the 4 key parts to the consultation. In the consultation materials, you may want to respond on any or all of these. So if you would like to focus your feedback on one element of the criteria, you're welcome to do so, or you may submit views across the full set of criteria. I will note that for the New Zealand taxonomy, there are also existing cross-sectorial elements. So these are the generic do no significant harm criteria, which are high-level principles and are applied across all sectors. The minimum social safeguards, similarly, are high-level and principle-based, and they apply across all sectors. And finally, in the adaptation and resilience space, there is a generic process-based approach that users could use as an alternative to whitelists to qualify under a generalised pathway for adaptation and resilience. This is a more detailed process that includes assessing climate hazards and risks and then designing adaptation and resilience responses to them. These pan-sectoral or cross-sectorial criteria are all available on the CSF website currently and are able for you to review and to begin working with immediately. Next slide, please. So, some key information related to the consultation. We are intending to open it from June the 8th, and it will run for 5 weeks until Friday the 10th of July. It will open on the CSF website. Everybody who is registered for this webinar today will be notified when it is opened. Also, if you sign up for the CSF newsletter, that's the best way to stay in the loop going forward with notifications related to the taxonomy. You will be able to submit feedback via an online form and survey that is available through the consultation pages. You are also welcome to email the Secretariat with free form responses if that is your preferred way to submit. And we're welcoming views from both individuals and organisations. Next slide, please. So some key considerations for your feedback. The big question that we are always navigating is, are the criteria usable, are they credible, and are they interoperable? And these are the 3 big design priorities that we're always looking to balance. So this is a key consideration as you work through the draft criteria. We're also very interested to hear if there are any activities that haven't been included that we think should be included, or any activities that have been included that we think shouldn't. And we're also interested to hear from potential users about use cases for the taxonomy related to your businesses, and are the criteria fit for purpose to deliver those. In the feedback, the technical groups are particularly interested in practical examples of implications. Also, as discussed, the taxonomy aims to be evidence-based. Therefore, if you have feedback related to thresholds or activity inclusion, robust supporting evidence for that argument will aid the discussion. And finally, if there are areas of concern, we really invite you to propose solutions that the technical groups can consider in the revisions. Next slide, please. So what will happen after the consultation period closes? Following that consultation period, the feedback will be analysed and proposed revisions will be formulated. We will hold a short webinar to summarise the feedback that was received in early August. This is a very genuine consultation process. Every piece of feedback received is duly considered. And we saw last year significant revisions were made based on the feedback to the agricultural and forestry consultations. The technical groups will then work through August, September and mid-October to work through and agree the revisions that need to be made to the criteria. And the process for this will be reviewed again by the Government Quality Assurance Function before the final criteria are published for voluntary market use alongside the other two sectors, so ag and forestry and construction and buildings, by the end of this year. Next slide, please. So we really encourage you to submit your views and have input and influence on the outcome of what this criteria and framework look like. As I said, you'll be emailed when the consultation opens. CSF are also available to speak to any organisation to clarify any of the criteria or answer questions either prior to the consultation or during the consultation period. So you can reach out to us via the email on screen, taxonomy@sustainablefinance.nz. And please also check out the website for any updates and staying in the loop as we move through this important consultation period. That is all for today. Thank you very much for joining us, ngā mihi, and we look forward to receiving your feedback in the consultation.